This week on the TT Show, we look at the state of the GPU market and NVIDIA's massive lead over the competition. Some surprising RTX 5090 news. Nintendo continues to crack down on emulation. AMD's new motherboards and BIOS. Microsoft's controversial AI feature returns. Razer's new $300 cushion. SpaceX updates and much more. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the TT Show. My name is Jak Connor. I'm a hardware editor over at Tweaktown, and today I'm joined by my co-host,
Kosta Andriadis, gaming hardware editor at Tweaktown.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, hello. How was Interstellar on IMAX?
Oh yes, yeah. So over the weekend I went and saw Interstellar in 1570 millimeter. With a 1570 millimeter IMAX cut. And that is for those technical nerds out there, and I suppose if you're listening to this, you probably fit the bill, but it's the equivalent of about 16K. And
yeah, it's like at minimum like 10 to 12K at like 70 mil film, or even like 60, 65 mil, 70 mil. Like when you see that projected, is just like the detail is just insane.
Yes, it is. And yeah, the IMAX in Melbourne, I'm pretty sure is the third biggest in the world. And this cut of Interstellar, which was mostly shot for IMAX theaters, is the highest format, like highest quality format you can view a movie in. And I tell you what, I cried 6 times.
It's so good.
I cried. This is a movie I've seen like, I don't know, 10 or 12 times already. It's one of my favorite movies. I know all of Nolan's movies are my favorite movies. I'm a big fan of Nolan.
It's so cinematic that like even when I like I've reviewed a couple of projectors, or like when I check out a projector, like I put on Interstellar, end up watching like a whole chunk of it because it just is so cinematic. It's like that's like a big screen movie. Like, I mean, it works well. Yeah. You know, I mean, however you watch movies is fine. But there are certain films that are just like so cinematic that the bigger the screen, or like the more immersed you are in the image and sound, just the more impactful it is. And that's one of them for sure.
There was certain scenes that were particularly jaw-dropping. I'm trying to think. Probably when they first float past Saturn, that was awesome. Like just the big pitch blackness of it all. And then the massive Saturn planet and the rings, that looked incredible. Of course, going through the wormhole looked insane. What else was particularly good? Probably an underrated, I think is probably an underrated sequence or part of the movie that isn't necessarily talked about for its detail and quality, is when they land on the planet with Matt Damon's character. And,
100%. I know.
And I just love that most of that whole sequence. I'm pretty sure all of it was shot in IMAX, and it just looks stunning with all of the height to it, and you could see how big the world was. And even though it's like a desolate planet, it looked beautiful in its own way. And I think he says that in the movie. Oh boy. Yep. Anthony is attempting to ring me. Should just get him on the podcast, like get him to come through. It was incredible, and I will, like, if they were doing a screening the next day, I was gonna go back and see it again. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's the best movie experience I've had, like, in the cinema. I did see the next day Alien Romulus. If you haven't seen that, have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it. I heard it's good. Is it good?
Oh yes. I'm a big fan of.
That franchise.
I love Predator. I've watched all of the Alien movies. Funnily enough, the xenomorph, that, you know, the gross alien thing, was a childhood fear of mine. But I would,
as it should be.
Huh?
As it should be when you see it as a kid.
Yeah, well, I watched the first one when I was like 10, and it scared the crap out of me. But for some reason, it was one of those, I think like most kids have that thing that scares them like in a movie or a TV show, but then they keep putting it back on. It's like my friend's got like, for some reason, an irrational fear of, I think it's like the tiger in Tarzan.
Oh, okay.
But he loved Tarzan. So every time he wanted to watch this movie, he would go to bed, have nightmares, and wake up his parents. I did the same thing with this, with Alien.
There's a thing though, like where when you're younger, like horror movies are kind of like going to a theme park. It's like the same sort of thrill. Like you want to be scared. Like it is very deliberate. It's weird, but like, you know, that's just how humans are wired. And sometimes when you get older, either you are less interested in horror, or you just, or you know, like you don't want actively go to see, want to be scared or whatever.
Yeah. Romulus, and we'll definitely get straight into the news very soon for those listeners waiting for the news. But I won't spoil anything with it. I went into it thinking that it was going to be like a cheap kind of like, oh, we're going to get a bunch of jump scares. Like they're going to make the xenomorph look cheap and like, oh, it's just it's not like an intelligent predator. It's meant to be the apex, like the perfect life form. Like it can like survive in the vacuum of space. Like it doesn't even need food. It's like hyper intelligent. But I thought that they were going to just because they have done that with a lot of modern things these days, where they just like make it cheap, and I just or it's like a cash grab kind of project where they just want to get it out the door because it's Alien. Yeah. Wasn't like that at all. They very creatively used humans to engage with it. It was creepy. It was visceral. It was like there's a part in it that is one of the best cinematic sequences I've ever seen in a horror movie, and
I do like sci-fi horror.
Exactly what I wanted from an Alien movie. So if you like Alien, definitely watch it and turn it up, because like there's parts where I'm like, oh, my skin was I went and saw it by myself.
Yeah, that's even
no one wanted to see it. I'm like, I'm gonna go watch this movie because it wasn't showing in Hoyts in Adelaide,
right?
And then in Melbourne, it was just I was in Melbourne Central, and I'm like, what do you mean they got Romulus showing? I need to go see that. Just went and saw. Watch it. Highly recommended if you're an Alien fan. I gave it an 8.2, and nothing hardly in my rating score ever gets above an 8. So
yeah, that's how like when I used to rate movies on like IMDb, like back in the day, it was just like so many movies just sit in the 8 category, like all these great films, and then you have like the handful that are like the 9s and the 10s.
Yeah.
You know, but then I think as I've gotten older, I've kind of like become less critical. Like if it's a movie that I just think just absolutely adore or can watch multiple times, like I have no qualms giving it like a 9, like even though it may not be like, you know,
there's a fun
in
factor
terms of like, you know, like it doesn't have to be like an absolute pure cinematic masterpiece to get like a 9 or a 10.
Oh, 100%. And look, Alien does have a few cheap jump scares halfway through, but what I appreciated is that they used them sparingly. And what's this? Not deliberately isn't the right word. It's, I think sparingly, summarizes it. It's like you don't feel ripped off by it. Like, you know, when you're watching that horror movie and you're like, oh, there it is again. And, you know, then you can almost like hit the rhythm with the beats of it, and then it's not scary anymore now. You know?
Yep.
But this, I was literally sitting on the edge of my seat in the cinema. So I recommend. Cool. Speaking of things that are terrifying, let's talk about how big NVIDIA is as a company. I think we kind of touched on this last week with that article that I wrote, kind of summarizing the situation in the PC industry right now. Consumers aren't in a great spot. We've got like, just in a nutshell, the absolute dominance of NVIDIA. Intel's suffered a humongous brand hit, has broken consumer trust. And that AMD's 9000 series is the least adopted generation of CPUs from AMD since Bulldozer. So things aren't looking great right now. So what's happening with NVIDIA?
So like building off the, looking specifically at GPUs, right? So desktop GPUs, mobile GPUs, PC gaming. Building off that story last week, there was another article or a study that went up showing the GPU market share between AMD and NVIDIA over the last 20 years. And in the last decade, the gap between AMD and NVIDIA has just grown. They've just basically just gone in separate directions. NVIDIA's gone up, AMD's gone down. Now you have to go back to like the early to, between 2003 or 4 or 5, around about there, where AMD was actually super competitive. The GPU market share for PC gamers was almost an even split.
Wow.
But then it NVIDIA kind of just had that sort of like, 60-40 lead for a few years. But then as soon as we hit to 2010 and then we got to the 20 series and the 30 series GPUs, like the 3060, 3080, very popular, DLSS, ray tracing, when NVIDIA started going all in on, supplemental technology, it just, the lead is now just almost insurmountable. So with that, this week we got the latest Steam hardware survey. So the Steam hardware survey every month, it just gives you just a look at what people are using in terms of like monitors, resolution, how much RAM gamers have. It's a very good tool to see where the mainstream market is, right? So like if a new game comes out, you want to be targeting the big chunk of gamers, right? So like, if everybody's got an 8 gig GPU, you want to make sure the game runs well, with medium or high settings tailored to that. If most people are playing in 1080p, then, that's where the performance target should be, generally speaking. 1440p is on the rise. 4K gaming, as much as we love it, is still like, 2 or 3%.
It's not a slither of the market.
Yeah, it's a small percentage. Same with ultra-wide. That's the enthusiast market, right? Mm-hmm. And when it comes to those sort of, the 4090, everybody knows, but it's not, there are a big chunk of them out there, but that's not the mainstream. So in the latest Steam hardware survey results, the RTX 4060, the current generation, the Ada Lovelace mainstream GPU, which wasn't a huge performance uplift over the 3060, but it's super efficient, low power, and it's a great 1080p card. If you're looking at just pure mainstream gaming, it's not a ray tracing powerhouse, it's not a 4K beast, it's none of that, but it is, a mainstream GPU. So that's now the second most popular GPU on Steam. It's behind the 3060, but the number 2 GPU being the 4060 desktop GPU. The number 3 GPU is the RTX 4060 laptop GPU. The number 4 GPU is the RTX 4060 Ti desktop GPU, which wasn't received well by a lot of people because it wasn't a massive leap over the 3060 Ti, which was super popular, but it is a decent 40p card. The biggest issue was the VRAM only being 8 gig. And that's the criticism of it. But, outside of the criticism, it just shows that the 4060 series is super popular. And then the 4070 is in the top 10 and the 4070 Super's in the top 20. And there's just no current gen Radeon GPUs. You have to go all the way down the list to, almost into like 100 to get to like the 7900 XTX flagship. But like the number one desktop GPU for AMD is like the Radeon RX 6600, which is a entry-level now GPU from the RDNA 2 era, and that's at number 34. And so the Steam hardware survey shows that, it's 77% or more like NVIDIA. But a big chunk of the, there is Intel there as well. Like, 7% is Intel, right? But that 7% is pretty much integrated graphics. That
doesn't count.
Yeah, that's CPUs with XE or whatever they call it.
Yeah, we're talking discrete graphics
XE
cards.
graphics, UHD graphics. That's because it includes all that. So that's integrated graphics. And the Radeon, which appears in the top 20 as well, is integrated graphics. So AMD has 14% market share, and a big chunk of that is integrated graphics now, as opposed to just pure Radeon GPUs. There are a number of Radeon GPUs, but it almost seems like it is, like legacy. It's like people that have had these cards for several years. They're not upgrading to new Radeon 7000 series GPUs.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
They're probably upgrading to GeForce GPUs based on what we see here. And I think this is interesting because we're about to head into a new generation. And as we discussed last week, just seeing this new data, seeing that NVIDIA's market share is just like it's a monopoly, basically. Either that happened just naturally, or like there was no real valid competition, or like whatever marketing, whatever it was that led to that situation. That's where we're at. And I think it just means that I put in the article reporting on the Steam data is that even if the next gen RDNA 4 mid-range cards are well priced and highly performant, and let's say for example it's cheaper than the 4070, the 8800 or XT, cheaper than the 4070, 30% more powerful, has just as good ray tracing. Is that enough to even make a dent? If you know what I mean? Like it's not just releasing a great product now. It seems like it's a situation where how do you crack into this market? It's almost like
they need to beat them at every single performance price point. That's why they need to come out and sweep with the generation. That is the only way I think that they will. I mean, yeah, you can chip down. I imagine like if they beat NVIDIA at the let's say like you said, the 4070 price and performance stage, if they beat them for the next 3 generations there, I reckon we could see a comeback.
But
and everyone loves an underdog, and this would fire up AMD fanboys something chronic if they were smashing them in those specific price to performance brackets. But I think if you want to cut the head off the snake, so to speak, and just like completely decimate the industry and come back, you need a sweep. You need to beat them at the 3060 or 4060, the 5060 level, the 70 level, 80, and all the way up. And also you need to beat the 4090, whatever the 5090 is. I think that's the only way that they're going to turn this around. But the Radeon team, and this is the thing that we were talking about last week, they've said that they've admitted defeat at the 5090 level.
Yeah, because they're not going to have a flagship next generation.
Yeah, but that's admitting defeat. That stinks. That stinks. That isn't a good indicator. That's not like, oh, maybe they're going to turn it around.
Yeah, because what happened with the, when you had the 3080, you had the 6900 XT, right? You had the 3090 and the 6900 XT X or XT, whatever it was. And the 6900 was considerably cheaper than the 3090, and there were a lot of people choosing that over that because you had that sort of like the 2 flagships going head to head. At that point, ray tracing wasn't really a big thing. DLSS was great, but it wasn't the I wouldn't say must have, but like a dot point where you're like, oh, that's a feature that I want, so I will pay a little bit extra just for that sort of thing. Like that wasn't quite there at that point. So they had that competition. Without having that this time, it's kind of like not only NVIDIA can just set the price that they want, but they can set the performance that they want.
Exactly.
They don't have to, like for example, if the mid-range Radeon cards are super powerful and super affordable, that could force NVIDIA to say, okay, even though that they're not going to take a huge chunk of our market share now, it's going to, like you said, it'll probably take a few generations. But then they could say, well, our 5070 was going to be this, and now we're going to push it a bit more to make it this, to make it a bit more competitive, or to just beat them. You know what I mean? Like beat them by 3 or 4% just to have that, just to be able to say we're better at that sort of mid-range performance level. And so without competition, there's no need to do that.
Yeah, it's not healthy for consumers. That's really what it boils down to. And look, on the other side of the fence, NVIDIA kills it. So
Yeah.
this is the byproduct. The monopoly is a byproduct of making a great product. And they have made fantastic products for several generations. You can argue about the price of them. And I would probably tend to agree as well that they are slightly overpriced. But you know what? The node processors are getting smaller. It's only becoming more expensive to manufacture at smaller NMs. The cost of the builder materials for these products are going up. If you want faster performance, better graphics, etc., it's going to cost more money. So as a result, the end consumer will pick up the bill because these products are going to go up in price. Now, they have made fantastic products for a long time. And this is what happens when there's not many competitors in the market. If someone gets ahead, they get ahead for a while because the Radeon team is just non-existent right now. That's the result of getting ahead. NVIDIA got so far ahead that they're what was my story? Like 88% market share of all GPUs?
Yeah, it was something like 80% of all shipments or whatever, 88% of all shipments, which...
That's insane.
Which is like AIB partners, which is the, like Asus, Gigabyte, MSI, all those brands. And we saw it as well, like, when we're in Taiwan, when we're in different countries, like you go to a PC store as you do because you want to see it, and it's just wall-to-wall GeForce. You go to a PC store here in Australia and you go to the GPU section, it's just wall-to-wall. It's just the green... that green GeForce is all you see.
Yep.
And it even comes down to like having shelf space, right? It's if you look back to the console wars of like the late 80s where it was like Nintendo had complete dominance with the Nintendo Entertainment System in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Sega trying to get market share, and they released their Genesis, as it was called in the US, or Mega Drive everywhere else, their 16-bit console. Now, what Nintendo, I'm not saying that NVIDIA is doing this, but Nintendo was so bullish that they said to retailers like Walmart and all these different big chains, they said, if you want to stock our products, we don't want, basically dictated how much shelf space they could allocate to the competition, basically. Like if you went to the game section in your store, if we went there and we saw 50% Nintendo and Nintendo games and Nintendo hardware, and then 50%, Sega stuff, which is kind of like, you walk into a store and there's Xbox section, PlayStation section. If we saw an even distribution, you're not going to get our games or stock anymore.
Wow.
That's how,
that's
and then it's like, how do you break into that market, right?
Isn't that anti-compete?
Yes, it is. Dirty tactics, and there's been like really great like books and even like some documentaries on how Nintendo kind of like was dictating. Like they would go so far as to even say to like publishers like Capcom or like like those sort of like game developers in Japan, and basically say you can only release 2 games a year because our console's so popular and games sell. So like like they're going to make money. So like you can only do 2. And you have to buy the cartridges from us because we're the only ones that are allowed to manufacture them. And you buy them at a premium, and then we take this huge cut for every game sold, and you get a small percentage. And it was just like, and then they did that for the developers. They did it for retail. And I'm not saying like this is the situation now for GPUs, but like if you walk into a retail store and it's 100% one thing, it's like it's an uphill battle if you've got a competing product to be able to even convince a retailer to say, give me shelf space.
Yeah.
You've got 100 stores all across the country. We want a shelf space. We want
why
posters.
would you?
Like, it's like, well, what's in it? Like, we don't know who you are. Like, this is what sells. This is what people want. Like, it's almost gotten to the point where it seems like for Radeon GPUs, just based on the last like 5, 6, 7, or even the last decade, is that they're almost like a brand new brand in some respect, if you know what I mean. Like they have to in from the beginning. It's almost like they have to start from scratch, which is why it's alarming. Like the fact that NVIDIA is now like 80, 90%, whatever, like 80% in Steam, and that's including like integrated GPUs.
And
Like,
you know
it's
what?
just-
I think it's
just
going to go
crazy.
up.
I think so too, because the 4060
Blackwell is
the
around the
4070
corner,
sales
and I think it's going to be incredible.
yeah, because everybody's buying them. And when I posted that story, like people commented on when we posted it to social media, saying like people in the US, because we're in Australia, they said, and a couple of people said it, that all the new builds that they see, like, you know, you go into a PC store, all the $1,000 US builds, $1,000 to $1,200 builds, they've all got 4060s, and that's kind of like one of the reasons why the 4060 is becoming so popular now, is that all these
Pre-builds.
all these new gamers are just coming in buying 4060 pre-builds because they're cheap, and that there's no mainstream Radeon pre-builds that people are buying, or there's not many that are even available.
I would be interested in seeing the market percentages for gaming laptops.
Yeah, it is pretty much. It's all just it's more of a bloodbath there. Because,
Really?
Yeah, because there have been rumors, or
is it similar percentages to desktop, or is it?
It's probably
very different. Very different.
Way more. And apparently, because this is not tinfoil hat, but this is something that has been reported on previously. Obviously, there's no official comment from Intel or NVIDIA. So when it comes to laptop CPUs, you know, you can get a Ryzen CPU, and that share kind of like goes up and down, but they're increasing slowly. But Intel had 100% of like laptops used to be just straight Intel, right?
Yeah.
And Intel, because NVIDIA isn't a competitor, they would design these new laptops with, you know, people like Asus or Gigabyte, or maybe not them specifically, but just like any sort of laptop brand. I don't want to single out and saying like they're
yeah. No, you're right.
Whatever. But they would basically dictate that, you know, we want this build to be a GeForce, and NVIDIA was the same. Like, they don't want to see their GeForce. They don't want to promote or want to see their GeForce laptop GPUs specifically with Ryzen CPUs. It's just, you know, it was just like this deal with like Intel and NVIDIA and all these, that was just built over decades, right? So like basically all these new laptops, 90% of them are all Intel CPUs with GeForce graphics cards, discrete graphics cards, and they've just got them, you know, they've got the similar sort of monopoly in that market as well.
Yeah. That is very interesting. I'm just trying to think, is there any way for us to find out, like, you know how it says here, Intel UHD graphics is the integrated graphics on the Steam charts. Is there any way for us to find out these kind of stats? Because it could be worth a quick discussion on the podcast just to illustrate the differences between the two, especially considering we're like covering the market as a whole now.
Yeah, maybe like let's table it for now. We'll come back next week. What I'll do is because it's like 100 plus GPUs in there. What I'll do is I'll categorize them all with the percentages into desktop, laptop, and integrated graphics.
Do a story on that. That'd be great.
That's right. It'll be like a big article, just a breakdown on what PC gamers are using, and then we can see, you know, because it's basically that'll cover 90% of it, because there is about 10% of it that just is in the other category, because there's just so many different bits of hardware out there. Like,
specs and configs out there.
So it'll be, you know, the other, even if you split that evenly across NVIDIA, Intel, and AMD, I'm assuming it'll still be the same sort of percentage there. But even if you split that evenly, I still think it'll just be NVIDIA like dominating every sector.
Oh yeah, no, if I was to predict, I still think it's going to be NVIDIA domination across the board. Let's keep it on the NVIDIA train here and talk 5090.
Yeah. So last week we discussed the 5090 because the specs were finalized. Well, and this is obviously rumor, like nothing's official, and nothing will be official until NVIDIA announces it formally, which is probably not going to happen until CES in January. But we learnt that the 5090 is going to be a absolute monster with like 21 or close to 22,000 CUDA cores, 32 gigs of GDDR7 memory on a 512-bit bus, 600 watts power rating. It's going to be an absolute beast, right? And if you step down to the 5080, which will be apparently more powerful than the 4090, it's basically got like half the CUDA cores, half the memory of 16 gig, and a 400 watt power rating. That's still going to be a powerful GPU, but the 5090, it seems, is just going to be in a class of its own again. It's going to be just like that. It's going to be that Halo product that's going to be a beast. Now, that came from Copite7Kimi. That's the leaker's tag or his name on X and Twitter. And he's like a known NVIDIA insider. When he posts stats and specs and things like that, he doesn't post them like a year in advance. He may do rumors and this and that, but he just basically posted, here's the chip name, here's its configuration, and that's the 5090. And then somebody responded to him and said, about a year ago or like earlier this year, you said that that NVIDIA was toying or was playing around with a 2-slot cooler for their new Founders Edition 5080 and 5090 cards. So, which would be a massive change compared to the absolute chunky monster 4090 Founders Edition. And so he was just asked, is that still the case, given that you're mentioning 600 watts here? And as we know, one of the reasons why flagship GPUs, 300 watt plus GPUs are massive is because of the heat sinks and thermal performance and things like that. Well, he basically said, yes, there's going to be a 2-slot cooler, which is going to be super interesting to see with like that much memory, that much hardware, that much power in a 2-slot GPU. So if the 5090 is 2-slot, I think it's gonna break a few brains. If you know what I mean, people are gonna look at it saying, "What? Why is that like half the size of every other GPU in the past 6 years?"
I don't know if this is correct, considering what we learnt while we were away.
But this might just be the Founders Edition, right? I don't think MSI and Asus are going to dramatically change their Strix or their Gaming X or whatever GPUs dramatically. I think this might be just limited to the Founders Edition, and I think NVIDIA might be just doing something specifically for their Founders Editions to make them, once again, these sleek, highly sought after, stylish sort of like GPUs. That's what I think. I think it's just limited to NVIDIA's. I don't think...
Weren't we seeing previous rumors that it was going to be bigger?
Well, that was the 4090 Ti cooler, right? So the 4090 Ti, which was never released, apparently there was a cooler design for it that has been leaked that was 4 slots. And that was apparently going to be a 600 watt card. So the assumption was that was just basically a test or a dry run for what the 5090 cooler would end up being.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be bigger.
And that's a fair assumption to make. So this may not turn out to be true, but this is the person that we're getting, that everybody is reporting, not as fact, but as with a high level of confidence that these specs for the 5090 and 5080 are true. And odds are it's going to be the case because this person has also did the same thing with the 40 series, and they turned out to be true. With all the specs and the GPU names and the chip names and
the
CUDA core counts and stuff. So if this person is saying, yeah, it's going to be a 2-slot cooler, I take it with a grain of salt because it's hard to wrap your head around how that's even going to work. Obviously, it's going to need vapor chamber cooling and all sorts of stuff. Maybe it ships with a radiator and it's water cooled. Who knows? But if they're doing,
that'd be crazy.
Which would probably not make sense for NVIDIA because they need to seed reviewers and stuff like that. So they need to make sure people can test it in a system without having to try to set up water cooling or whatever the case might be. But having it be a 2-slot might not be that out of the ordinary, because if you look at the current, we know Blackwell's going to draw more power, but Ada Lovelace was over-engineered in terms of the coolers. The 4090 didn't have to be as big as it did, the Founders Edition. There were 4080 Supers that were 2-slot that ran fine temperature-wise, even though they drew up to 320 watts. The power management on these GPUs for the 40 series is really, really good. The efficiency curve and stuff like that. So maybe it just comes down to that, is that they've decided that they don't need to over-engineer the cooling of it.
Look, I hope it is going to get smaller because it's ridiculous, the 4090.
Yeah, I don't want it to get bigger.
I don't want it. No, of course not. I don't want like a massive, like, square or rectangle cube in my PC.
It'll get to the point.
So
where
I do hope this is right. And Copite is a renowned leaker, that's for sure. Look, 600 watts, 5090. We're looking at 4K. 240 hertz, maybe 120 in heavy games, like, or maybe even 150. Like, I'm thinking like Black Myth Wukong with plus 30 or 40% performance would probably, like, I was getting, and I don't have the absolute best system, but on a 4090 I was getting about anywhere between 80 and 120 FPS.
Yeah,
4K.
and that's with DLSS and frame.
That's with everything.
Like that.
That was completely maxed out.
That's the full ray tracing mode, and that's the what I'm hoping with the 50 series is that it's like, in addition to the raw performance uplift, which is always going to be, which we know is going to be impressive just based on the specs, is I hope that they have some sort of new RT hardware designed specifically for path tracing, and that might be the case. Like, and this could potentially be like, a story where it's just putting two and two together. Like, this is not based on what I've been hearing, but if you look at the amount of games this year that are going path tracing, or just games with like 6 or 7 different ray tracing effects all going at once. You got Black Myth, you got the Star Wars Outlaws, even though that's, maybe not the most well received game. You got like Dragon Age coming up. You got Indiana Jones with path tracing. And there's a few others as well, and that's basically, you need FrameGen, you need DLSS, and that's insane levels of GPU hardware required just to pull that off. So if they've got some sort of new ray tracing hardware that can accelerate that to, like, 2x level, to like where you get double the path tracing performance,
That would be nice.
That would be a selling point to some degree. Like, it wouldn't be the main selling point, but it would be a selling point for the 50 series.
Absolutely.
Be like, oh, now path tracing is way more accessible.
Maybe that's DLSS 4.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
Maybe that's it. That would be cool. And I think that is necessary if we want to keep this, like, where it kind of feels like the graphics are snowballing right now. Like, ray tracing has picked up performance. It's picked up performance through DLSS, and gamers are now finally getting their head around AI upscaling can be a good thing. And in the later generations of NVIDIA's cards, which will eventually trickle down to everybody, you need to turn these things on. Like, you're silly to not turn them on.
Yeah.
It's free performance and there's no image degradation whatsoever. And in some cases, it can actually make it look somewhat better. So,
yeah. What I think NVIDIA needs to do is target, like, the 5070, if that can hit 4080 Super at a minimum levels of path tracing performance, ideally 4090 path tracing performance at the 5070 level, then that would just open it up to, 1 million or 2 million more gamers.
Yeah.
Because the 4090, as much as people love it, most people just know that it's incredible, right? Like, it is a very enthusiast, hard to justify product because of just how expensive it is. You just have to be an enthusiast to pick up a 4090.
Yeah, no, of course it is. I mean, to even pick it up, you got to be strong. It's so heavy.
To physically pick it up, you need to be a grown up.
No, it's not for the lighthearted gamer. You're gonna need help getting it back from, like, Newegg or whatever, local PC store. But yeah, let's keep it on the hardware train. AMD's new BIOS and the 9000 series.
Just one quick break.
All right, we are back. Let's talk AMD motherboards.
Yeah, So there's a few reviews over at Tweaktown now for their new X870 and X870E AM5 motherboards. So this is their new flagship motherboards are out now for Zen 5. So these weren't available when the initial Ryzen 9000 series CPUs were released, which is a shame because, you know, you want to pair new CPUs with new motherboards, right? Because chipset technology improves alongside, you know, CPU tech. And, you know, when the Intel CPUs drop, they're most likely going to just launch with brand new motherboards and a whole, you know, range of new features. So the X870 boards are out now, and by all accounts, they're really, really good. You've got USB 4 as standard. You've got PCI Gen 5 as standard. These are the flagship boards, so they're not cheap. They're obviously some of the most expensive AMD boards ever released. But you've also got faster DDR5 speeds, which AMD has now updated for all their motherboards. So all Zen 5 CPUs, and now there's now like DDR5 8000 Expo support, which is basically one-click overclocking now. They're confirming over dual-channel DDR5, so you can hit DDR5 8000 now with this latest BIOS update. That wasn't available when the 9000 series launched. You were limited to DDR5 6200 speed as a maximum.
Why was that the case? Why did they launch it like that?
Because it was unfinished. Like all the controversy, you know, there was that Windows update to improve performance. This new BIOS now increases the power rating for the entry-level mainstream ones if you want to have like a 105 watt version, which will increase single core and multi-threaded performance, not specifically for gaming, but for like, you know, productivity workloads and things like that. So they're, by the sounds of it, and G-Skill managed to get their one-click overclocking up to DDR5 9000 speeds with the new motherboards.
That's great.
You know, and Asus did some like world record overclocking on the new flagship 9950X as well. I think I reported they pushed it to 7.55 gigahertz, obviously with liquid nitrogen, but that's a world record. So like these new motherboards are unlocking new performance on these new CPUs, right?
That's awesome.
Faster memory, new performance. There's a new BIOS now that apparently improves the core-to-core latency, which was one of the criticisms that some of the more in-depth CPU reviews for Zen 5 went into. They tried to figure out why the performance was the same in a lot of cases.
Core parking?
Yeah. And like it was like the core-to-core latency and that sort of stuff. It was just a lot higher, and so this new BIOS update apparently rectifies that as well. So like I guess like based on all of this, like the idea or general consensus is that AMD maybe launched Zen 5 too soon. They didn't have the BIOSes where they should be. When they didn't coordinate with Microsoft to ensure that the Windows update had all the features that apparently, you know, improved performance in some games or for some people. Some people reported that there was no issue between the old update versus the new update. So it's been a bit of a mess because a lot of reviewers have been testing and retesting and trying updates, trying settings, working with AMD. So it's been like an absolute mess in a lot of ways. But the arrival of the new boards has been successful from what I've seen in terms of like their performance and features. They seem really, really cool. And if they're unlocking more performance in the Zen 5 series, maybe this bodes well for the X3D launch, which will be primarily the chips for gamers. They'll be marketed for gamers. They're going to be the ones that people are going to have their eyes on. So maybe this BIOS stuff, maybe the new motherboards, maybe the new chipset, all this sort of stuff will make that a more smoother and more stable launch.
Yeah.
Which you would hope would be the goal with AMD, and then they would delay it or they would time it to ensure that there's no question about what performance that they want to hit, what performance that they tell people this does deliver versus the review reality or any sort of issues that crop up. You would assume that like you fumble once, you don't fumble again. Like, you mean right after, like you launch and you go, okay, we messed that one up.
I've seen people fall twice.
Yeah, I know. And then you have your next launch a few months later. You don't, like, I mean, if you fumble again with a 3D launch, then that's on you, sort of thing. Like, learn from your mistake.
What do you think
Like,
the performance is going to be like?
We don't know.
We do not
Or
know.
do we?
We have no idea. What we can say is that it is, and this is on Wikipedia, it's the same 4nm node process, and we'll just leave it at that. But look, with these motherboard updates, maybe we are going to see a significant performance jump. And I think I was reading yesterday that some of these updates can even go back as far as the 5000 series, Zen 3. And improve performance there. Like, this isn't exclusively for the 9000 series either. This is going to fix some problems with the 7000 and 5000.
Yeah, I think they've updated the previous gens as well. Yeah. So this is good for like the 7800 X3D owners as well. This is good for people that have the X670 motherboards, the previous flagships, which I have. I've got the Crosshair X670E, which is like, a beast of a board. So like, the new X870 version is obviously, what you expect 2 years later. It's going to be like, wow, look at all, why is there like, 5 or 6 USB-C ports on this thing? Like just insane levels of features and M2 slots and
I want it all.
Craziness happening.
Gimme.
But yeah, you're right. Like it benefits all, which is always good to see.
That's great. Look, free performance is free performance. Every gamer should be happy about that. But yeah, so just if you are rocking any of these applicable CPUs and configs, definitely update, keep your stuff updated, and also check what Windows version you're running as well.
Yeah.
That will help. I'm literally doing a check for Windows right now, and I am completely up to date. So, and I'm even in the beta channel. Huh?
Yeah. The new update is apparently rolling out, I think.
Yeah. I'm
waiting
for it.
Usually takes a while. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to update unless it tells me. And then even then I'll be like, oh, wait a bit.
Yeah, you wait a bit for bugs to be ironed out. Let's move it along now. Where are we headed? Yes.
The console wars. Tell me about Nintendo's vision, or like what they think about PlayStation and Xbox.
This is something that we have talked about on the show previously. And it's kind of like Nintendo. It's kind of like how we've been saying Nintendo doesn't really consider itself to be directly competing with PlayStation or Xbox. It's judging on its actions. It just plays to the beat of its own drum, makes products whenever it wants, releases it whenever it wants, makes games whenever it wants. Like it's not beholden to any kind of competition.
Yeah, they're not worried about being the most powerful console. They're not worried about being your all-in-one entertainment box. They're not worried about being the place that you play, Fortnite or whatever. Like Fortnite's on the Switch, but it's the Switch is
a Nintendo
basically
console,
a class of its own.
Yeah, it's an yes, you can watch YouTube and do these other things on it, but it's primarily it's a very Nintendo console. It's limited in so many ways compared to the competition. Like just like the online experience on the Nintendo Switch stinks. Yes, it is 7 years old. But you know what? I've got a feeling the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have the exact same kind of odor, just at a different flagrance to it.
Yeah, I just want the UI experience, like for the Nintendo shop or the eShop.
Oh, you want it to load quickly? That'd be nice.
Yes. I want it to not only just load quickly, but be able to scroll through it quickly.
Oh, you want to? No, we got to wait to the Nintendo Switch 3 for us to be able to scroll quickly. So yes, that all of these things kind of illustrate that Nintendo, it plays to the beat of its own drum. It's not worried about what the PlayStation is doing. These are different price points as well. Like the Nintendo Switch originally launched at it was $299 USD.
Yeah. I think around about there, yeah. But it's still the same price, right?
No, of course it is. Nintendo doesn't. There's no sales. There's no sales at Nintendo. Yeah, so $299. The Nintendo Switch 2 is probably going to launch around the same price point. I would say a bit higher, just based $349 maybe. I reckon. It wouldn't surprise me if it's a $400 console, given the PlayStation 5 Pro is now a $700 console.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Switches, well, Nintendo's consoles are typically cheaper than the quote unquote competition. But legendary Nintendo game director Shigeru Miyamoto, is that how? Miyamoto.
He's the creator of Mario and Zelda. He's basically the Spielberg of video games.
Yeah, he's the LeBron James of the developing world. So in an interview with Famitsu, the museum that Nintendo is building and has been for quite some time, because I reported on it quite a while ago. It is scheduled to open. Oh, it opened yesterday. There you go. Yep. I would love to go and see it. And this museum is dedicated to the history of the company and the achievements that it's made. However, it's set up in such a way that they want you to leave. They want visitors to leave with a sense that Nintendo is more than just a developer, which I thought was a very cool kind of, like, it's not just going to be a display of their glory. Like, you actually leave learning something about them. And this is what the LeBron James of the game development world said. I hope that through this, people will understand and refrain from dragging Nintendo into competitions like so-called console wars, which focus on high specs and hardware performance. He then laughed. And added that he hoped, this is what he added. He hoped that people visiting the museum would come away thinking that Nintendo was much more than a company that made games. Moreover, Miyamoto said he hopes people see that Nintendo is separate from the competition and the cutting-edge technology discussion surrounding these consoles. And he then mentioned that Nintendo is making movies, and I'm pretty sure the Super Mario movie was the most successful animated movie of all time.
Or one of. It was super popular, yeah. Like, it was huge. And there's like a Zelda movie in development. But, I mean, Nintendo has always been mascot-driven, so to speak. Like, it's like the console hardware and stuff. Like, they've had powerful consoles and, you know, like back in the day, and you know, they were competing directly with PlayStation in the home console space. But, like, Nintendo was always Mario. Like, you know, that's what made it a household name. At you know, Mario reached the heights of, like, there was some point, like, it was iconic, like when Super Mario Brothers 3 came out in like 1990 or 91. You know, a survey with Americans, more Americans recognized Mario or children or whatever the survey was than Mickey Mouse, right?
Yeah.
Mickey Mouse is obviously a non-entity now, but, like, you know, back then people still considered it synonymous with Disney. Disney is, you know, has moved so far beyond Mickey Mouse now that it's not a thing. But, like, you know, it was like one of those things where it's like, oh, a video game character is more popular than one of the most popular cartoon characters of all time.
Yeah, well, this is how big Mario is. So the Super Mario Super Mario Bros. Movie, I just wanted to get the name right, grossed $1.36 billion worldwide and broke multiple box office records, including the biggest worldwide opening weekend for an animated film and the highest grossing film based on a video game, and the first film based on a video game to gross over $1 billion. That was Mario. That was our Italian plumber.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool. Made in Japan. I don't even make sense. There's Japanese people made an Italian plumber. And
like the story of Mario
we love it.
Fascinating.
Oh, we love him. Oh, God, we love him. We can't get enough of him. Even his stupid brother. He's afraid of everything. We love it. $1.36 billion. So yeah, the Nintendo Museum is meant to reflect that Nintendo is more than just a developer and a console maker as well. I want to go so bad because I'm such a fan of Nintendo, like Super Smash Bros. And Zelda, and I mean even Pokemon to an extent, but I would rate that quite low in comparison to the other titles that I've played. I want to see the big old square. I can't believe they put a mystery box like from the Super Mario games on the roof. Look at this image. Reese, show the people this. Do you see that? That's on the roof. That's not real. That's not fake. So if you fly over Kyoto, you're going to be like, what is that? Oh, that's the Nintendo Museum.
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so like...
I hope that's real.
Like Nintendo and like Mario and stuff, like it is transcended product, if you know what I mean. Like it is like a brand in like the traditional entertainment sense, right? So it's like you like Nintendo, you think of the Nintendo games, right? You think of those experiences, the great design, the characters, the music and stuff like that. You obviously know the hardware and like you can be like a fan of like things like the GameCube or whatever it was, you know, whether it was like the DS or, you know, like all these like cool hardware that they've made over the years, but they've just been basically just delivery tools for their own games. They've always kind of done their own thing, but it started with the Wii, where they basically just decided that they weren't going to be in an arms race with Sony and Microsoft. The Wii was obviously a phenomenon because of its motion controls. Whether or not it was a great console in the end is up for debate in terms of you look at core experiences, what you want from gaming, whether or not it delivered what you want. But like, you know, it had great Mario games like the Galaxy series and things like that, but it sold like 100+ million units.
101.63 million units.
The Wii U was
a phenomenon.
The Wii U was a failure because it was a prototype Switch. Yeah. And then the Switch was basically them consolidating their hardware and handheld market into a single all-in-one unit, and which was a brilliant decision. At the time, nobody really predicted how successful it would be. It was kind of like, okay, the Wii U was a failure. We don't know how this Switch is going to turn out, because they still had like motion control stuff when it first came out, and it was kind of like, what is this? And then, you know, you had Mario Kart, which is on the Wii U, but it's on the Switch now. But it was like obviously a better version. But then, you know, over time, you know, with Zelda and Mario Odyssey and things like that, the Switch is just exploded now. And when people think about like PlayStation sales versus Xbox sales, like the Nintendo Switch is just kind of like a side story. It's like, well, you know, they're behind the Switch's X or whatever, and it's not really even... like they're not competing with them, I don't think, anymore. I do. I completely agree with Miyamoto's comments on that. I think they spawned an entire new form factor. We are seeing companies now replicate the design of the Nintendo Switch. That's how popular it is. And for those that are just looking, I don't know if we mentioned the numbers, but the Nintendo Switch has moved, according to the Nintendo website, as of June 30, 2024, 143.42 million units. I think it's making it the second most popular console Nintendo has ever released, behind the Nintendo DS at 154.02 million units. So it's insane.
I think they're going to stick with this design, as all of the rumors that we have been keeping up with since the beginning of the podcast. We are just going to see a much more refined Nintendo Switch 2 that is going to be a hell of a lot more powerful than the one that we have today, which is 7 years old.
I think it'll be like the Super Nintendo versus the NES.
That's it.
That more powerful version of it that'll lead to like more visually impressive games, like maybe even better games, like who knows. But I mean, Nintendo have proven that it doesn't, like, you don't need the most powerful hardware in the world to make the best games. You know, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom run on hardware that, you know, NVIDIA Shield hardware that, you know, was in like a little box that could just run Doom 3 from 2006. Like, you know what I mean? Like you've got this massive open world Zelda game, and sure, like, it doesn't run at 60 FPS or whatever the case might be, but it's just the gameplay is king for Nintendo, and design is king, and that transcends limitations. Like when you just have, like, if you look at PC gaming, and if you just have like a game that just looks amazing and it's just like a 7 out of 10 experience, but it's like the visuals and like the ray tracing or whatever it is, and it's like, okay, that draws you into the world, but that's doing the heavy lifting for you. You know what I mean? So like if you look at like Mario Odyssey on the Switch,
it
looks great, right? But it's an amazing game.
Yeah.
That even if
it
you're playing in
feels good.
720p, like whatever, and like maybe you can point out artifacts, you can point out limitations technically. Maybe the draw distance here isn't as great as that. Maybe there's a bit of slowdown in this one section, but it generally runs smooth.
It's
but
smooth. What are you talking about? It's butter.
Like, it doesn't matter. Like do you, when you're playing that, you don't think, oh, I wish this had ray tracing, or I wish this ran at 120 FPS, or I wish this was in 4K, oh, I wish, like, that would be nice to have things, but it's not required. And
gamers want to play games, not tech demos.
That's right, yeah. As much as I love visuals, and I'm a graphics, you know, I love like cutting edge visuals.
Oh, I'm a graphics whore.
It just all comes down, it just comes down to the game.
No, gameplay is, look, gamers, I think you put it quite perfectly. The visuals will be what draw the gamer in, but the gameplay is what makes the gamer stay. The game doesn't have a fluid combat loop or a fluid form of gameplay, even if it's purposefully janky, like say like an XCOM or like a turn-based, and I use the word janky loosely there because I suppose I'm comparing it to like Super Mario Odyssey, where, you know, Mario is like flying through. He feels like he feels acrobatic. You know, like you throw the hat around, you're jumping off the hat. It's just so smooth, and it's so fun to just manipulate him like that, versus something like an XCOM where it's like, okay, it's a very strategic, sit down, tactical kind of experience. But even then, that experience for some people is enjoyable. It's the gameplay of it. It doesn't matter how it looks. Like, RuneScape is the biggest it's ever been. Old school RuneScape is the biggest it's ever been. That is just a complete testament to it doesn't matter how it looks. That game looks like a pile of Reese bleep this shit. Yeah. But if you put on the HD version, you download the plugin, and for someone like me that has been playing since I was like 13 or 14 years old, maybe even a little bit younger, and I'm 26 now, that has nostalgic heart to it. And it's also, because it's more popular than it's ever been, there's new people playing it. It's not just old people coming back, which blows my mind because the game is just a grind. So this is like an example that is anti what that Obsidian art director was saying, where it's like, we're going to aim for 30 FPS and, you know, just make it the most beautiful experience ever. That doesn't matter if your gameplay is trash. No one cares if your game looks good. I mean, people will look at it, but no one is going to play it. That's the thing. And, you know, what is this? Sony Concord is an example of that. They poured all their money into the animation side of things, supposedly, and the gameplay stunk. If the gameplay was tight and unique and was like a fresh take on that Overwatch kind of genre, people would have paid $40 for that.
People would have taken the time to check it out.
Yes.
And that's how you get like, like it's just word of mouth can create a groundswell for a lot of games these
Deadlock
days.
Isn't even officially out. Is a perfect example of that.
Myth Wukong, like it was just the visuals draw people in, but like it became super popular in China. Then everybody was playing it. Everybody had fun with the Souls-like combat. So like maybe it's not a 10 out of 10 game, but like solid gameplay is what propelled that to become a smash hit. And I think like a slight tangent, but like talking about like, you know, where gameplay is king, a lot of people, not bad mouth, but like, you know, things like remakes or remasters have like a bad, you know, people are like, oh, that's a cash grab. And, you know, and some publishers do lean into a bit too much. But if you look at like Resident Evil 4, right? Like that was a great game during the GameCube era. It's like been ported to so many consoles. And then Capcom remade it with like modern fancy visuals, but it was the same core game essentially. So it's like, oh, that's a great game and now it looks better than ever. So people will replay it based on that same principle. So remakes, you know, can also be like a great thing too. Like, you know, like Dead Space remake I loved because it was just the same game, but just with like modern visuals. So like, yeah, like we care about visuals, but the reason people are interested in remakes with fancy visuals isn't primarily the visuals. It's because they want to play that same great game that looks different.
It's either the gameplay or the story.
Secondary thing. Yeah, it's like the secondary thing. It's like, yeah, I love that game. I would replay that game. Oh, now it looks like this. That's an excuse to replay a great game. It's not you're not playing it just for the visuals. You're replaying it to experience that great game first and foremost.
It's how you interact with the game is the gameplay. If that isn't an enjoyable aspect, your game will fail. That is it in a nutshell. It doesn't matter. You can polish a turd as much as you like. That's you know what I mean?
Sorry, doorbell. I know there's a delivery.
That is the life of a reviewer. We will be right back. And we are back. Apologies for having a couple breaks this episode through the power of editing. I'm sure it wasn't too time consuming for you. But yes, let's bring it back to the Nintendo story and what is happening with Switch emulation. And
yeah,
I can only imagine. I don't know anything about this, but you know, I've followed a few Nintendo stories in my time, and I can only imagine that they aren't thrilled about this.
Yeah. Nintendo obviously notoriously litigious when it comes to everything, when it comes to their IP and protecting their IP, including like, you know, like YouTubers couldn't even post gameplay back in the day. Like, you know, like you couldn't even, or else you get a copyright strike. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a delicate way of putting it.
They're litigious. I thought you were going to say about like, you know, their IP or like emulation. You're just like, no, just everything.
It is.
You know, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's just, I was not, it caught me off guard. Go ahead.
Yes. So there was like, I think it was last year or maybe been earlier this year. I can't remember, but pretty sure it was last year where they shut down the popular Nintendo Switch emulator for PC called Yuzu. Like Yuzu had just hit like a number of milestones where it was able to start emulating games in like, you know, 4K, super speed and like accurate one-to-one emulation of Switch games, and Nintendo basically shut it down. There were obviously legal action with who knows how much money they were going to say you're going to put whatever they were threatening.
Way more money than the guy that was running Yuzu has.
Yeah. So then it was just like taken down. Like it was like okay, like even like the open source, the GitHub, everything just taken down. Obviously, internet being the internet, things are backed up. So there was a group that picked up the Yuzu emulation, and it was called Ryujinx, and it was like development continued. There was a Discord, and it started to get more and more popular over time. So now that's been taken down, but just the wording is weird. So like they, on the Discord page, like, you know, one of the people that knows someone who works on it or like, you know, is involved with that emulation project basically said that the person behind it was contacted by Nintendo and offered an agreement to stop working on the project, remove the organization and all related assets he's in control of.
So they bought him out? That's what he's suggesting?
Well, the wording is so bizarre. It's like, yes, a word says like they've come to an agreement. The agreement, I think, is that you're avoiding a prison sentence and a fine that you would never be able to repay by agreeing to remove everything.
Oh, you don't think they like Nintendo gave him cash?
I think Nintendo got in touch with them and said, like, you remember how they sued
But
that
they threatened
person?
them. Yeah.
That was like that person that like went to prison and then now he's repaying them for the rest of his life, the fine or whatever it was.
What?
I think that they just came to this emulation developer and basically said,
Remember
this is what's
Steve?
on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what's on the table. Like, you're going to face
Steve's
up
a
to 20
Nintendo
years in
slave
prison.
now.
Up to 20 years in prison, $1 billion fine.
Yeah,
Or-
$1 billion fine.
Or the deal is you remove everything within 48 hours. All traces, all code, shut down everything. And I think that's what happened.
This is extreme, but this is the visual that I had in my head. It's like Nintendo's captured this guy and they've got him in like a back room or in like a shipping container.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
there's
how it was.
There's a single globe white light, and then he wakes up with like a bag over his head, and then they've got like a gun and the computer, and they're like, "Okay, now you've got 48 hours to decide what you want to do."
Oh, it'll be just purely cold, right? It'll be a guy in like a suit and just like calm, like very nice and pleasant. But
He
just
looks
like very,
exactly like Mario,
very
though.
neutral.
It's crazy.
And he just hands like a manila folder,
Mm.
and the guy opens it up, and it's just like, he goes, "Yeah, this is the deal. We want you to sign it because the alternative is this." Then hands him another folder, and it tells you like what you're gonna face.
Oh my god! Like it's Bowser. Like
Yeah, it's just like that. But like,
they do good cop, bad cop, but it's like Bowser and Mario.
yeah, like the biggest story is like whether or not emulation is legal or illegal. Like like you can't stop emulation, as we know. Like older systems, like enough time has passed that emulation is pretty much the main way you're going to play games from the 8-bit or 16-bit era. Let's face it. Like you're not going to be busting out old consoles and trying to find like video to analog video to HDMI converters,
buying adapters.
Yeah, all this sort of thing. Like,
was Raging making money?
No, it's not. It's not about making money. Like with Nintendo, it's like they've always had a hard stance on emulation. Like they just see it as a 100% copyright violation that should where they would throw the book at you, like full fines, full prison sentence. Like they see that as like they see emulation almost like a very serious crime is how they view it.
Mm.
They see it like like the highest level of white collar criminality. When in actual fact, emulation is very community groundswell driven. Like sure, like you do, like if like a new Mario game comes out and then it's like, oh, here it is on a torrent site, you can download it and play with this emulator. I think that should be shut down, right? Like that's not quite what emulation is for, so to speak. Like, but when it comes to like older systems, like if like enough time has passed, you're not making money on Super Nintendo games anymore. Like even Nintendo should have, here's how you can play our old games on your PC, and you can download them here, or you can subscribe to this service and play them. Like you have to embrace it. Like you cannot fight inevitability, right?
They're
like,
too proud, man.
Enough time will pass where Switch emulation is no longer in their radar.
I think a big component of this is Japanese pride as well. They're very proud, and you know what? They should be of what they've made. They've made. Yes. Honestly, it is. My grandparents know who Mario is. Like if I showed them a photo of Master Chief, they'd have no idea who that is.
And they'll say, "Well, you're going to play Nintendo." Like that's still a thing. Like that's old people associate video games with Nintendo.
Yes, 100%. And I get it. I would be proud of it as well. But I think their pride is somewhat stifling the industry in some ways. And it makes it... Look, Nintendo is hard to pet, if you know what I mean. It's like... That's... I love them, but they're like an angry dog. If you get too close to it and they're like, ah, and then they'll, sue you into oblivion. But, yeah, this doesn't surprise me. And you know what? In 2 weeks' time on the podcast, there'll be another one that is just going to pop up. They're not going to, beat this. This is kind of like
the
Netflix and stuff trying to like take down torrent sites for movies and stuff. You're never gonna win. You're never gonna win.
And also, like, a key part of it as well is that Nintendo, not that they don't want anything to do, but they have zero PC presence, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at like the Xbox One or the PS4 or even like the PS3, a lot of those games are available on PC. Like a big chunk of them are. They're on Steam or whatever. So there's no real reason outside of a handful of exclusives for you to go out of your way to emulate those hardware, or even to like illegally obtain, like to get those games or whatever the case is. So and with the PS4 now, like, you know, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Ghost of Tsushima, all those big games from that generation, The Last of Us Part 1, Uncharted 2, 3, or whatever that collection, they're all on Steam now, right? So if those weren't on Steam, there is like actual a PS4 emulation scene at the moment, because I like to follow what's going on with emulation. So and like they're trying to get Bloodborne, which is a game that hasn't been
they've been trying
remastered,
for so long.
It hasn't been ported to. So the PS4 emulation project is primarily driven by getting Bloodborne running on PC at a super high frame rate with no glitches or performance issues. And that's what's driving emulation, right? Is to get that running on a PC, that game. Now, if it's not for God of War or Last of Us, because all those games are available on PC. So if Bloodborne was ported to PC tomorrow, there's no reason to follow the development of that emulator anymore for a lot of people, because it's like, well, I can just grab Bloodborne now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like part of the Nintendo thing for the Switch emulation is you've got this huge install base or user base of PC gamers. And they're like, oh, I wouldn't mind playing Zelda. I don't have a Switch. Now, I don't foresee a future where Nintendo are going to port their games to PC.
No,
I just don't think it's part of their brand. Like we've said, they're a different thing altogether. So that's why they're probably way stricter or way more litigious or like protective is, you know, the positive version of it, of their games and IP when it comes to the PC side, is because they have no intention of ever bringing this stuff to PC. And if anybody tries to, they'll shut it down.
I have this could be like a pipe dream. I just thought of this then. Imagine, and again, I don't think this is ever going to happen, but it would be so cool if it did. If the Switch 3, 4, or 5, you could, from a Thunderbolt USB-C port, plug directly into your discrete graphics card in your PC, and I don't know, maybe in the NVIDIA app, you can choose to change it to an external GPU, and on your Nintendo Switch, because they're both new, they'll be both powered by NVIDIA. You could then use maybe not 100% scaling of the performance of your PC, of your GPU that's in the in your PC. Let's say 50%. That discrete graphics card, if it's like a 6000, 7000, like 7080 or a 70, it could be. Oh man, imagine! I'm just thinking too much now.
You just made my imagination go wild. Imagine you've got the Switch 2, and then or even they tease it at launch, but it's not available at launch. So sick. There's a super dock or whatever it is, and basically inside it is a custom 4070 specifically tailored to interface with the Switch to boost its performance to 4K with frame generation and shit and stuff on your TV. Like that actually isn't outside the realm of possibility. Obviously if there was a way to do it, that would be a way for Nintendo to get a piece of the PS5 Pro.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There is an enthusiast market that is willing to spend whatever it takes.
Definitely. I would love to be able to turn my graphics card that's in my PC into an external discrete GPU for my Nintendo console.
Yep.
That would be awesome. If you could offload, or like, let's say you could dedicate 50% of your GPU compute power on your PC to your Nintendo Switch. So, you give it some headroom as well. But I'm like, it's a 4090, right? Or like a 5090 or a 6090 or a 7090. It's like I'm not using, it's probably at 1% idling right now. Oh, wait, no, I'm actually recording on AV1, the encoder. So it is using the GPU.
It's all hardware encoding, so it's not going to be using much.
But I would just love to be able to dice up my compute like that. That would be awesome. And that would break them into, you're right, that would hurt Sony. And
that would actually be as powerful as the PS5 Pro potentially. Maybe more so, because they could leverage bespoke hardware to just push DLSS quality with frame gen and get like 4K 120 for basically every game with some sort of like, performance patch or whatever mode.
And all you would need is a USB-C cable. And
it would be 4K
good software,
because with DLSS and frame gen they could hit that, and they could have reflex and all that sort of all those technologies they could just leverage that we love on PC. That would be a game changer because they'd be the only console with it, right? Because Sony has made their own AI upscaler because there is no AMD equivalent. They haven't got frame generation yet. I assume that'll be something maybe for the PS6. Because all these technologies are going to come to console eventually. Like if Nintendo's got Ampere hardware in the Switch 2, they could boost that with like a super powered. But that was always like the early rumor was that maybe there's a dock with advanced hardware, NVIDIA hardware in there that can push 4K with DLSS and stuff like that. So like,
I think we'll see a dock that increases performance.
But that would have to be like an add-on cost because that's like the Pro version. That's kind of like get the Pro dock, the Switch 2 Pro dock.
I bet you it would be divided up like that.
Yeah. And maybe they only need like a 4060 level equivalent in there to be able to do a lot of that. But I think you would probably need to target a 4070.
You could do that kind of data transfer over a Thunderbolt 3. Wait, Thunderbolt 4, is Thunderbolt 4 40 gigabytes per second? That's plenty.
4, No, you don't need like Thunderbolt 3. Like because like the current,
because I'm thinking of the BOM
like
for it.
HDMI 2.1, DisplayPort 1.4a, whatever it is. Like you don't need the bandwidth you need is perfectly fine over like just current Thunderbolt.
Oh yeah, I'm just thinking because Nintendo always wants to keep the BOM down as much as it possibly can. Just the builder materials on the Nintendo Switch. I wonder what their profit margins are. I reckon it's healthy.
They don't make a loss, and they never have, right? So going back to the original consoles, they've always sold a console as a profit. It was only Sony and Microsoft that started being like, okay, we're going to break even, or we're going to make $2.50 on every console we sell, but we're going to make that up with subscription services and games where it it doesn't cost them anything to make a copy of a game now, especially now in the digital era.
Yeah.
It's negligible, right? You're paying for R&D, you're paying for development costs, you're paying for them to make money.
Yeah, it's hardly
when you buy a game. But like the hardware, like even the PS5 Pro, right? That $699 cost is probably them breaking even.
Yep, probably. Let's move it along. We're gonna bang out some of these.
Let's get through this.
Last stories quite quickly. Let's talk recall, and we'll keep it on the Microsoft page, and then I'll talk about that new patent that was filed.
Yeah. So recall. As we
don't you dare.
Recall.
Don't you dare.
Apologies. It was Copilot plus PCs. Here's a feature that will let you search your history of using your PC by saying, what was I looking at last Thursday? What were like what hotel did I blah blah blah. Where was I? It was basically a index search, generative AI where you could search through what you have done on your PC. And in order to do that, Recall took screenshots every few seconds of everything you did, put it in a database. And then we found out there was no security. It was not really encrypted. Anybody could gain access. And it was
damage.
And they pulled the feature, right? So Copilot plus PCs obviously launched without Recall. And for good reason, right? Because it sounded like, what
it was
are you doing?
invasive.
it was so invasive that even the benefits of it didn't make any sense. Like why the benefit is so minimal to be able to do something that I can find something on PC, but like for a brand new type of search that you have to sell to somebody, you can't erode privacy.
They shut the bed.
They've taken it back to the drawing board, and now they've come out to explain how secure it is. And it is impressive, right? And when I was reading through this blog post, it was basically, it's got Windows Hello Enhanced Sign-In Security, which is the camera stuff for the Copilot Plus PC laptops. But then that has an encryption key that is using really high-tech security that cannot be broken. And all the data all recall data is now stored within what they call a secure VBS enclave, which is like an Azure data security thing for like businesses and high level security, right? So all your recall data is now inside this fancy thingo. It is that's like a brand new security model for applications that can basically block admin level attacks even. So even if you're logged in as an admin, you won't be able to get access. And it's like, okay, this is pretty secure.
Wait, so it's saved within the kernel?
Yeah, it's 100%. Like, well, it is like really secure now. And after reading through it, basically you go, well, why wasn't this the goal to begin with? Like if you're implementing like data center level security for recall with sign-in security and like fancy pass keys and encryption and things like that. Like none of that was there when they announced recall. None of that was there when it was found out that even if you've got sensitive information open up on your PC, like it'll take screenshots and snapshots. So now like the screenshots and snapshot stuff is is way more secure in what it does and doesn't capture. But then also as well, like it is entirely opt-in. It's not enabled by default. It'll be opt-in, and you can physically remove it from Windows if you want to. It is easy to remove recall from a Copilot PC. So all of this stuff is based
on the system. Like
it is still stored. It is locally, right?
Default.
But basically what they've done is that they've created basically like a secure data center within your PC for that data. Kind of like,
is that within the kernel though? Is that where they're storing this?
No. It's stored on the PC in a basically like a highly encrypted thing, which you can't really access even as an admin.
That raises some questions as to what is happening in that directory. That? Why can't I access it?
It is a separate, like, secure kernel, is what they.
So it is in the kernel. It's saved in the kernel.
Well, no, it's a separate kernel. Like it's not the Windows kernel that is like, which was the big controversy recently, is that app developers have access to the Windows kernel.
Yeah. No, this was the whole CrowdStrike thing. It's like CrowdStrike has access to the kernel level, and then when an error occurred within the kernel through the update that was pushed out, we got boot loops because the kernel has to be 100%.
So the way
functional.
The way that they kind of like explain it is that you've got your Windows kernel, and which you've got kernel mode and you got user mode, and that's where all apps currently sit, right? So there is now what they're calling it an enclave, right? They go, all snapshots are processed within the enclave, and that's basically a separate secure kernel. And basically it's like biometrics, like it needs to be you. They reckon it's tamper proof and it's super secure, and it's based on their the latest Azure security, right? So that's basically what they've done with recall, is now they've created what they should have done initially, right? And it sounds secure. Like whether or not like it can be hacked or not is up for debate, but it is so dramatically different to the original version of recall that it's like, why wasn't this?
Yeah,
like, like they're saying like recall is all about privacy and security, right? But it wasn't initially. Like this is our our philosophy. This is what we do at Microsoft. We're all about securing your data and privacy, and that's what we're doing with Copilot Plus PCs and AI features. But yeah, you're doing that now, but you didn't do it. You weren't going to do it initially. And if nobody said anything, would Recall had come out like as it was, like with no security whatsoever? So it's a complete 180 that has a layer of disingenuousness to it. Which means that
they are fighting like an uphill brand battle with Recall right now because
it's impressessively secure. Like you look at the data and you go, wow, that seems like they've gone really.
Well, I would like to speak to a Microsoft developer of some kind, and see what they think about storing data within this specific kernel. I'm probably butchering the explanation of this, but I wonder how many other apps use this similar kind of I suppose attacker prevention strategy of burying the directory in below Windows, below normal user access.
It's kind of weird because like they say the only way you can access this secure kernel, right? So like you've got like hackers that can be able to come in from every angle, right? Like either if they've got admin rights or being able to log into your system with admin, then they can get access to kernel. They can access the full Windows system files, etc., etc. All your data is compromised at that point. So it's like that's a loss. But the way that they've got this layer now, where it's the biometric stuff, it's the Windows Hello with an extra level of encryption, where it has to be you and can only be you that can log in. That's the only way you can access this secure kernel, which then has like another layer of encryption for all the Recall. No, it's all run locally. So the only way you can access this part of this system is for you to be in front of it and for you to be you. Okay. So that's how they've designed Recall security now. And that is super impressive because it seems like they've thought about it in a way that makes sense for generative AI for local data that could be sensitive, right? And this sort of security would be great if they bring it to other parts of Windows, or like, you can bring it to like Office thingos or like certain documents and things like that. Like maybe there's a new, version of security where you can have data stored in a certain way that is only accessible through this new secure kernel, or this enclave, or whatever they're calling it for Recall, which they say is like brand new technology, by the way. This is like new Windows app or Microsoft app security. And I think they developed it on the server side specifically because of the kernel stuff, because they were like, all the issues which is why we don't hear about like Microsoft servers or like Azure servers getting hacked, is because apparently because of this sort of stuff.
Well, I'm excited. This, sort of stuff this will be a complete 180 for Recall.
And it'll be interesting to see people's impressions and hands-on with it, because it sounds pretty cool. Like, I mean, even just from like a data security point of view, it's just a very interesting case study to look at. Yeah. We've gone from a version of this that was completely
could be considered a virus. That's
to now this is like, okay, now you've got this groundbreaking security to match what you're touting as a groundbreaking AI feature.
Yeah, you need your fingers and voice to get into it.
And there is like backup keys, but even they said like that's like a one-time thing, and you're not going to be able to do that sort of like pin key to get in every time. That's only like an emergency level thing.
Yeah, I'll ask a few people and see if I can get some different perspectives on this. And
because this is obviously their blog post, so there might be things here that aren't obviously being mentioned, but I can only go by what they're reporting, and I'm not a data security specialist.
Of course. Like, neither am I.
My knee-jerk reaction is like, okay, this looks impressive. Like, why didn't he have even 1% of this initially?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's that. My reaction is, this is really impressive, but like, where is Microsoft, like, getting me? Because they always do somewhere. Like, is this entire process gonna like sap 5% of my total performance on my PC? Like, where's the concession that we're making here? Because
it'll definitely take some performance, but
Yeah, I feel like the consumer will make a concession somewhere. Like, since it's in the kernel, it might have internet access somewhere, or it's a struggle to get rid of it, or like I bet you there is something. It can't just be this good. It never is. However, I do hope it is. So let's move it along to the patent.
Yeah.
Where is that story?
The very bottom.
The very bottom.
Microsoft may enter.
Okay, so just a slight disclaimer before we get into this. This is a patent. This is not indicative of any kind of upcoming product. Patents are just cool to look at, I think, because it gives a bit of an indicator for what is in the research and development labs at companies. But there has been a lot of patents that I've covered in my time, and I would say 9 out of 10 of them never see the light of day. So, but what we do see from patents, if you follow them long enough, is small little parts of project A being cut off and Frankensteined onto project B, and the Nintendo Switch is probably an amalgamation of maybe 6 or 7 or 8 or 20 different patents. And the thing that all comes together into the final product.
One of the other cool thing about patents is that you kind of have to use your imagination, because the patent diagrams are usually so basic that they don't give away designs, right?
Oh,
so
I don't even know what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, if there is a switch to patent, it's usually going to be Nintendo's, like, this is how we're going to transmit data from a controller to a console, and then the picture of the console will just be a generic picture, right? It won't actually give away the design of whatever
it's just like the shell,
and the controller won't be the exact design. Like, even if it's something specific to the controller, it'll just be that's accurate. Everything else will just be generic. And like when you see like patents for tablets or patents like for this with Microsoft ones, it's just like a generic rectangle or whatever it is, and then you just have to look into it to see, okay, what is this doing that is new for the company or just new in general, because a patent has to be something that hasn't been done before and could be copied.
Yeah, that's it. Patents are also indicators that, I mean, a lot of companies just file a lot of patents, because if you own the patent for a certain design, then someone else, a competing company, can't make that. In fact, no one else can make it.
If you're a patent troll, the whole idea of a patent troll is somebody that buys up patents that are not being used or haven't been by people that have created them, and then that are just like general for like that can be just applied to this is a patent for some sort of Wi-Fi. Okay, guess what? X company, you make Wi-Fi routers. You're infringing on my patent here that I just bought for $1,000, and I'm going to sue you, or you can settle out of court for X amount of money. And that's usually what patent trolls and things like that. It's the whole industry. I wouldn't say like a massive industry, but it's like it's abused by people as well.
Absolutely,
to make money, because if you hold the patent, you hold the rights.
As for what Microsoft has filed initially was filed in February 2021. Patents also have a period of time before they're unveiled.
Published.
Because, I mean, for obvious reasons, if the patent filing was immediately public, then
it could be copied.
Yeah, it could simply just be copied. It could affect stock prices, etc., etc. So some have a disclosure on them, or a non-disclosure. And this one was recently unveiled. It is a 360-degree rotating device from Microsoft. Now, at first, I thought this was a Z Flip kind of like Galaxy phone. And then I remembered the tragedy that was the Windows phone.
Yeah, that Microsoft don't make phones anymore.
That reminds me of that tragedy of that Windows phone. Yes, but it turns out it is not a smartphone. This is a device or a gadget that can be pretty sure it says laptop
or tablet, like
laptop, So this is in this application, Microsoft describes a device that can fold 360 degrees and can take the form of a tablet, a laptop, or another computing apparatus. Apparatus means you're going to be wearing it. I don't know what that means.
I think, well,
does apparatus mean you're going to be wearing it?
No, it just means it can be used for, yeah, that's just a weird thing. Like maybe it can be used as like a display. You know what I mean? Like it could be like any sort of like apparatus is just like a tool. It's like
a technical. So the definition is the technical equipment or machinery needed for a particular activity or purpose.
Yeah. It's like a tool. Yeah.
Okay. So pretty vague wording there, but this is what happens on patents. So I don't know how this thing works. So it's a new gadget, has a rear cover, a glass layer, and a light emitting layer in between. These devices include special slots in both the cover glass layer and backplate to help them blend easily and smoothly without creases, even when folded. That's what saved me.
That's probably the patent side of it, right? Because like
it's creaseless.
Foldable stuff, you can always see the crease, right? Like
so far,
like they've gotten better. Like the first gen foldables, like it was just kind of like, oh yeah, I see the crease from like a mile away. It's like I see it, and it's like, well, it's cool, but you know, like I really wouldn't. It would just bother me too much. Like you know, when you like if you had like a dead pixel sort of thing, where it's like as soon as you notice it, that's all you're gonna see, right? So that's like the holy grail for foldables is to have just seamless. You know, some sort of system where you're not going to see a crease or you're not going to see a visible like hard line bend. And maybe that's what they're patenting. And maybe it's for just like a flip surface that can just open up to become like a full-size tablet, or it can be folded to be like a laptop where one side's like a touch keyboard, or you can close it completely and then you can just have it as a small tablet or a large tablet. Like maybe that's what it is, because 360 means it's going to bend both ways, right? So you're going to be able to bend it to have where it's going to be closed. You can bend it the opposite direction, so there's a screen on each side. You can open it up where it's just one big screen, or you can have it like a laptop where it's where the keyboard
this is the Surface.
Is its own sort of screen. Yeah,
this is the Surface Fold. I bet you it's called the Surface Fold.
Yeah, and
we've look at the Surface Pro.
Yeah.
The 13-inch, it's pretty much the same kind of design, but you would have obviously an additional fold. More folds. But I think that was what it would be called, because the Surface, pardon me, the Surface Pro, this is a tablet, this is a laptop in one, and they're very popular apparently.
I mean, I was just about to say, like, I do like the Surface. I think they're great devices, and they kind of have been for a while, like the laptops and the tablets. But it's no iPad or Galaxy Tab in terms of like market share, right?
Fair.
The Surfaces are they're kind of like Microsoft's version of the iPad, because they aren't super cheap. You can get affordable ones. It's not, but like the expensive models like are even more expensive than the iPads, I think, just because of the hardware that you can get.
Yeah, I suppose, but it's more of a mixture. Like if you're someone that wants the tablet side for maybe, I don't know, watching movies on a plane, but you also need the productivity side of it as well, then you've got a better keyboard.
I remember seeing, I think it was the one time I went to CES in 2020, like Lenovo had like a laptop that was like a tablet that was like two screens, where it was like a laptop and then you open it up to be like a tablet. It was like one of those, it was a prototype. Where it was like a foldable, where it was like, you know, you unlock, it's like basically it looks like a laptop, but you open it up and it becomes like a big tablet. But then if you have it like a laptop, it's like a touch, you know, that becomes like the keyboard and stuff like that. And it was just like a prototype, and it looked cool. Like, but you could obviously see the bend and things like that. But I can't even remember if that actually came out. But the good thing is that like it seems that every company is working on foldables. Like, and we saw like the Huawei went hands-on with the trifold phone, right? And that's impressive because it's like trifold, right? That's not even just a single fold.
Crazy.
Super expensive. But like it's not like it seems that like I get the impression that companies are wanting to create foldables more than people actually want foldables.
I don't know about that because the foldable market is increasing with smartphones, and
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
and I think they haven't hit the point where Apple has made one. I think that's going to be a massive, like whenever they do that, if they do choose to do that, and I've been writing rumors on that kind of development for quite some
Isn't
time.
there like a Pixel Fold as well coming apparently?
I think that's already out.
Oh, right.
Isn't there? The Pixel Fold? And and that one is.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Absolutely incredible. Anthony, when he came over,
he's got it?
Yeah, he's got it. And it feels like two individual phones just molded together, which I think they've nailed the aspect ratio and the form factor of the folding device, because you can use it. Yes, it feels thicker because when it's fully closed, but it feels like one phone. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like two candy bars. Like some of the other folds.
Oh, yeah, because of the hinge, like it actually looks like a single device. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm just looking at it now.
Yeah, it's very. It's very good.
I think you're right. Like I think maybe the the foldable market in the smartphone is blowing up if everybody's got a version of it.
Well, it's yet to be, I don't know, have that Apple stamp of approval and legitimized. I would say. I think we will start to see more folding devices be adopted when this crease and hinge is gone, but also more importantly, and I would like to know the sales numbers on the Google Pixel 9 Pro Fold, because of the aspect ratio and form factor, is when they're really thin, because that newest one from Google, that is really thin. Like that is. And that's the impressive part, is when you're holding it flat, like when it's completely folded out, you're like, wow, it was as thin as the Huawei one, but because that folds 3 times, it ends up being a chunk.
They kind of have to,
It's a chunk.
But even then, it wasn't that chunky. Like it was. That's why it costs like 4,000 or whatever it costs.
Yeah, some of the most impressive engineering I've ever seen up close, though. That is gorgeous piece of machinery. But I think there is a real market for this. It's so strange. Like we started with like when mobile phones first came out, they were folding. Like you did the whole like clamshell kind of design.
I love the flip phone, like the Motorola Razer or whatever. It was, the flip phone.
Yeah, and then we Apple put the keyboard under the screen with the iPod or the iPhone, and that was like
the original iPhone. Yeah,
that was like an incredible moment where you didn't need buttons on your phone anymore. You have now what is called the touch screen. That became the norm, and now we're bored of that. We don't like it anymore. The touch screen it's not enough, Kosta. 120 hertz at some strange resolution that I can't run off the top of my head is not enough. We need it to be different, and now we're going back to folding. And I don't think the book.
And Apple's also bringing back a dedicated camera button. Like there is a level of physical, like either where it's like a tactile button or some sort of physical interaction of like unfolding something where it's more personal, right? Like the touchscreen was a revolution, but everything just went so far into touch, like with tablets and stuff, that you lost the actual touch of hardware, right? Of being able to open something up, to be able to press a button.
Feeling it.
Yeah, so like instead of tapping now on the iPhone, you press the button to take the photo, and people love it because it's like, well, oh yeah, I mean, that's how cameras worked 30 years ago, right? Like, that's, or obviously DSLR cameras now, like physical buttons, physical tactile touch is so valuable for feeling a real connection with a device.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Spiritual. It's not, I'm talking about like spirituality or anything. It's just like a direct.
Yeah, you're
connection that
interacting
you
with
have.
it.
That's why I like game controllers, right? Like, you know, playing on your phone, and like the tragedy of like modern society is that like kids are playing on iPads with touch controls, and you hand them like a controller, and they'd be like, "Oh, what's this?" Right? But it's a tragedy because the feeling of the controllers and the pressing the button, having the action happen, it's like, you know, it's like a tool, right? It's like, you know, when you make something, like you use a hammer, you do the physical action and the result happens, right? But if you're just like touching on a screen and the screen contextually changes constantly, you don't feel like you're actually doing anything.
Well,
other
the
than
interaction is uniform. Everything,
yeah, that's right. Like
everything's
it's
the same.
it's just like a bland single layer to it.
I have a great idea for NVIDIA. I think their 5090, we should have a pull start cord. So we go up,
like a lawnmower.
We go up behind the GPU, and then we rip it like a lawnmower. So we're like, whoom, like that. It'd be like starting a boat. Yeah. And then the fan gets going like.
But with like, you know, like PC gamers love it, right? Like we've got mechanical keyboards for a reason.
That's it.
Because of not it's not just the performance, right? It's the tactile feeling, right? The linear switch,
I want to feel them actuators.
Yeah. You know, like good switches on a mouse, like the good sensor, like the ergonomic shape or the symmetrical shape or the light weight of it, ultra light speed, wireless, so it doesn't feel like you don't feel the cable at all. Like, you know, if you're like really into tech, like you value that in some degree, you will value that sort of physical touch or thing. And yeah, like maybe I think you're right. Like being like the smart, why it's foldables have taken over in the smartphone place is that just the act of like unfolding it and having a larger screen is like you've created that larger workspace.
Yeah, I think that's a big component of it.
You've created that smaller, more compact for whatever you're going to do as just a regular phone, and then you can open it up, and you've created like this larger thing. And being able to be in control of that, I think, has an intangible value.
I'm pretty sure the most popular foldable smartphone, I don't know this for sure, so don't quote me on it, is the Z Flip. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I see that. I see that one quite a bit, and I think that
because that one makes the most sense to me. Like if I owned the first,
because it feels like a phone
fold,
because it's no longer because it's no longer a smart device. You're unflipping it to take a call, and it feels like you've got a phone.
Yeah.
And then when you flip it, close it, and then you can use it as, you know, for social media, whatever. But the unflipping part just makes it feel like something different. Yeah, and I think like maybe it'll be cool to see whatever this patent Microsoft is working on become a reality. Some sort of Surface Flip thing, tablet thing, would be cool.
Yeah, I think we should wrap it up there. We're getting a bit strapped for time. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. We have covered probably the main stories.
If you want to know about Razer's cushion, just check out the show notes. Basically, what they've done is they've just released like a cushion that goes on your gaming chair that is wireless, and it has all these like haptic rumble things in it, and it costs $300.
Go get it, everybody! Everybody, go get the Razer's cushion. It's going to change your life.
It's called
go get it, quick! Spend $300 on something that's going to make your butt feel jiggly.
So that's all it was.
Oh, that's such an egregious pricing for a cushion. God. You should ask Razer for one and review it, because obviously it's hilarious. But yeah, $300 pillow for your butt. That's you know.
I asked them for their new Basilisk mouse, which they're sending, that's a design that I like. The ergonomic. You know, it's like on an angle, and it's got like the grips, and it's like, you know, I remember like it's like the super long one. It's kind of like that Logitech 502, where it looks like a gaming mouse from the mid 2000s era.
Yeah, I had a Razer, the MMO one with the 12 keys.
Oh yeah.
On the side.
Yeah, the buttons on the side.
Yeah, because I was playing heaps of MMOs at the time and League of Legends. And
did you actually use all those buttons?
Yeah, I did not use 12.
Yeah, I know. Because whenever I saw
used 4.
I'm like, I don't have the mental capacity to be able to just like dexterous, to have the dexterity to just like learn that and just being able to press all these tiny buttons to do stuff. When I can just press the button, press the key on the keyboard and be done with it.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode. Definitely go head down to the show notes for any additional reading on any of the stories that we've mentioned throughout the episode, and some extra ones that we didn't get to. And go check out Razer's pillow. Spend all the remaining money you have on a gaming pillow. Obviously, that's what you need. Everyone needs Razer's gaming pillow. Thank you for listening, and we will be back next week with another episode. Cheers, guys. Bye.